Mission failed, the system whispered in his mind. Affection level, insufficient. You have 3 days remaining in this world. Say your goodbyes. Leave no regrets. Jimmy stared at the flickering ceiling light above their bed. Janet hadn't come home that night. Again. The scent of her perfume had long since faded from the pillows. But he didn't feel anger. Just a soft, hollow ache in his chest. Not because the mission had failed, but because he had hoped it wouldn't. He stood quietly when she returned the next morning, heels clacking against marble, eyes glued to her phone as she laughed softly at something Michael must have sent. When she saw Jimmy, she didn't even flinch. "You're up early," she said flatly, brushing past him. "I made coffee," he offered gently. "The one you like." "Oat milk, no sugar." She froze slightly. Looked at the cup. Then at him. "What's this about?" she asked, suspicious. "Trying to bribe me again?" He smiled faintly. "Just thought you'd want something warm." She narrowed her eyes but took the cup anyway. Didn't thank him. Just walked away. Day 1 passed in silence. Jimmy didn't bring up the missed calls. He didn't mention how her salary had been transferred to Michael's account. He didn't even bring up how their 5th wedding anniversary had gone unnoticed. He simply sat beside her that evening, folding laundry while she scrolled through her feed. She glanced at him once. Then twice. Then put her phone down. "You're acting weird," she muttered. "Am I?" "Yeah. Like, you're not even mad." Her voice had a bitter edge. "I didn't come home last night." "And you're just sitting there? Folding socks?" He smiled gently, not meeting her gaze. "You looked happy." "I didn't want to interrupt." She scoffed and stood, brushing invisible lint off her designer blouse. "If you'd been this agreeable 5 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have grown so sick of you." He didn't respond. Day 2, she didn't come back again. Jimmy spent the evening recooking the same meal he'd made for their anniversary. He let the noodles go cold. She finally answered his 3rd call. Her tone sharp. "If this is about last night, save it. I told you I was busy." "I'm not mad," he replied softly. There was a pause. "Then why are you calling me?" "I just wanted to say I'm making your favorite. Thought maybe we could eat together tonight." Her voice faltered, just a breath. "Are you up to something?" "No." "Are you dying?" "Not yet." She hung up. Day 3, he didn't call at all. But around noon, she messaged him. "Michael's not feeling well today," she wrote. "He's still down after you embarrassed him last week. You should really apologize." Jimmy looked at the message, then set his phone aside. The system buzzed in his mind again, almost like a sigh. "Host, your vitals are stable, but time is running out." He nodded. That evening, he sent one last message. "I made the noodles again. The way you like them. Just one more dinner. Come home?" She replied quickly. "If you'd been like this before, maybe you wouldn't have disgusted me so much. Anyway, I'm staying with Michael tonight. He's still recovering. Don't text me again unless you're ready to say sorry to him." Jimmy stared at her words, then gently locked his phone. The table was set for 2. The noodles had started to curl and clump together in the bowl. He didn't touch his plate. He just waited, long into the night. Jimmy wasn't born into this world. He arrived quietly, with no grand entrance, just a sudden awareness, a voice echoing in his mind. Host consciousness successfully transferred. Mission: conquer the affection of subject Janet. Timeframe undefined. Completion will result in reward eligibility. That had been 5 years ago. At first, everything felt like a game. Win her heart. Earn the affection score. Return with rewards. Simple. Logical. Executable. He studied her closely in those early days. Janet, the eldest daughter of a fractured business empire, cold and fiercely independent. She had agreed to the contract marriage to maintain her image in front of shareholders and an aging grandfather, nothing more. She made that clear. "This is transactional," she said the first night they shared a house but not a bed. "You stay out of my way, I stay out of yours. Don't embarrass me. Don't pretend we're in love. Got it?" Jimmy nodded. The system was blunt. Current affection, 3 out of 100. He didn't protest. He started small. Made her coffee the way she liked, only to find it untouched each morning. Suggested dinner together, she'd wave him off, saying she had meetings, then come home smelling of champagne and someone else's cologne. Michael had been her childhood friend. But Jimmy had learned quickly that friendship was just the name she used to keep Michael close without accountability. Michael was fragile, needy, always sending voice notes at midnight. And Janet answered every one. Affection level, 5 out of 100, the system would note with artificial cheer. Sometimes, when Jimmy dared ask why she spent so much time with another man, her eyes would flash with venom. "Michael has been with me since before I even knew your name. You think wearing a ring means anything to me?" He'd back off. Each time, a little more of him crumbled. But he didn't stop trying. He remembered one rainy afternoon, 2 years in, when they were driving back from an investor's retreat. The road was slick. The brakes failed. And in the last possible second, he'd yanked the wheel and twisted his body over hers, shielding her as metal and glass exploded around them. He lost consciousness from blood loss. Woke 3 days later to find Janet sitting stiffly by the hospital window, her makeup smudged for the first time. "You're awake," she said. He nodded, throat raw. "Are you okay?" She looked away. "You were lucky. Nothing fatal." The system chimed. Affection level, 43 out of 100. That was the highest it ever reached. He tried to build from there. He bought her favorite pastries on the way home. Remembered the names of her assistants. Memorized her family's business board structure. Smoothed over her public scandals. Took the blame for a deal she tanked. But no matter how much effort he poured in, the score plateaued. Then fell. "Michael is going through something," she would say. "He needs me." "But I'm your husband," Jimmy once replied, not angrily, just quietly. She stared at him like he'd spoken in a foreign language. Affection level, 32/100, the system updated. The next week, he came home to find a birthday cake for Michael on their kitchen counter. With "thank you for always being there" piped in frosting. His name wasn't mentioned. Later that night, he saw the photos on social media. Her arm tucked into Michael's, both smiling under string lights. Her head tilted just enough to touch his shoulder. Every comment from their circle was filled with laughter, fire emojis, teasing hints. Jimmy had left a single comment beneath the post. "You two look good together." Within minutes, the photo was deleted. And Janet stormed into their apartment at midnight. "What the hell are you trying to prove?" she snapped. "It was just a post. Just a birthday." He had said nothing. Just walked back into the study. The next day, she transferred her entire salary to Michael's account. Said he needed it more. When Jimmy looked at her, she didn't even blink. "I'll handle the finances," she told him. "Don't make this into a thing." That night, he sat alone at their dining table. She didn't come home. The food got cold. The system whispered in the back of his head. Affection level, 19 out of 100. Host vitals declining. Emotional threshold breached. Still, he hoped. Janet's grandfather was the only soul in that world who treated Jimmy like a person. The old man had taken a liking to him early on, perhaps because Jimmy always listened, always remembered what mattered. He remembered the elder's weak knees and his love for the warmth of a particular Chinese herbal tea. Remembered how the man hated loud parties but adored gardening, how he liked to sit in the sun after lunch. You remind me of my son, Grandpa Lin once said, eyes watery. Too stubborn for your own good. But decent. Jimmy smiled. I hope I can keep making you proud. You already do. Sometimes Jimmy wondered if the real mission was just to bring peace to this man's last years. On Jimmy's own birthday, Janet hadn't even looked up from her screen. But Grandpa had insisted on cooking. The old man's hands trembled, but he made the entire meal himself. Jimmy hadn't cried at the time. He just quietly ate everything on his plate. The system murmured again. Affection level, 12 out of 100. He didn't ask for more. In the final few weeks, Jimmy had grown quieter. He stopped asking Janet where she was going. Stopped checking if she'd eaten. Stopped caring when her perfume started smelling like Michael's cologne again. He spent more time in the study. More time with the system's voice in his head. Sometimes, they just sat in silence together. Host, the system said once, almost gentle, you could request early return. You don't have to wait for the full countdown. Jimmy shook his head. Not yet. Why? Grandpa's birthday is soon. I just want to give him one more happy evening. And Janet? Jimmy didn't answer. He still hoped. Even if it was foolish. Even if it meant watching her fall asleep with her phone still open to Michael's texts. He still cooked dinner. Still folded her laundry. Still set her slippers by the door. Still held a tiny thread of faith. But when the system spoke the final time, mission failed. 3 days remaining. Something in him finally let go. That night, Janet walked in, tossed her shoes aside, and glanced at him blankly. You're still here, she said. He smiled faintly. Yeah. Just, here. She didn't ask what he meant. The party was already loud when Jimmy arrived. The venue was a luxury penthouse lounge, glass windows stretching from floor to ceiling, city lights glittering beneath them. Janet's inner circle was all here, polished, beautiful, sharp-tongued. Jimmy walked in alone. He scanned the room until he spotted her. Janet was lounging on a velvet couch, legs crossed, champagne glass resting loosely in her hand. She didn't look at him. Not once. Michael was beside her, far too close for a childhood friend. Their arms weren't touching, but the space between them was intentional, just enough to spark speculation, just little enough to deny it. One of her friends noticed Jimmy first. A woman in a backless emerald dress leaned in and said loudly, "Look who finally grew a spine." Jimmy actually showed up. Another smirked. Didn't think he'd come after what happened last week. He really must be desperate. Jimmy kept walking. Each step felt heavier. The whispers followed. He's really about to do it, huh? Poor guy. If my man ever embarrassed my bestie like that, I'd leave him in the dust. I heard he's only still around because Grandpa Lin likes him. Imagine having to cling to an old man to stay married. Jimmy stopped in front of them, facing Janet and Michael. The laughter around him quieted, replaced by the kind of silence that sharpens cruelty. He nodded at Michael. I'm here to apologize. Michael blinked as if surprised. Then gave a small, gracious smile. Jimmy, that's not necessary. We're all adults. No need to make a scene. Janet looked up then, her eyes narrowing. Of course it's necessary. You embarrassed him in front of his staff. You slapped him. I remember, Jimmy said softly. You're lucky Michael's so forgiving, she added coldly. He didn't even want to press charges. Jimmy turned toward the bar, poured himself a small glass of baijiu, and raised it toward Michael. Since everyone's watching, let's do this properly. Michael immediately stood, waving his hands like some kind of saint. Come on, man. A drink? That's too much. Just a word of apology is enough. Jimmy didn't move. I'm sorry. For everything. I let my emotions cloud my judgment. Let this drink be my sincerity. Janet didn't speak. But her gaze stayed fixed on the glass in his hand. Everyone in her circle knew Jimmy had a severe alcohol allergy. Back in their second year of marriage, he'd collapsed after just half a glass at a networking event. Janet had screamed at the staff for not warning her about cross-contamination. That was back when she still pretended to care. Now, she said nothing. Jimmy brought the glass to his lips and downed it in one go. The liquid scorched his throat. His stomach churned almost instantly, heat blooming up his chest like a rash. But his hand didn't tremble. Not once. Someone whistled mockingly. Now that's a real apology. Too bad it took public humiliation to see it. Another voice laughed. He should do another. One drink isn't enough to erase what he did. Jimmy didn't react. Just looked at Michael. Michael gave a sheepish chuckle. You didn't have to go that far, Jimmy. Honestly. You've always been a little intense. Jimmy's lips twitched into something like a smile. I had my reasons. Janet leaned back into the couch, swirling her glass. Do you even remember why you hit him? Or was it just a tantrum? I remember, Jimmy said, eyes never leaving hers. You were staying at his place. Again. Said he needed emotional support. Again. Michael stepped in, his voice low and carefully modulated. That wasn't her fault. I was in a bad place. I just needed someone familiar. Jimmy's voice was calm. And the photo you sent me? The one of you hugging her from behind in your office? Michael laughed under his breath. That was a misunderstanding. You looked right into the camera and smiled. The room fell quiet. Jimmy turned to Janet. He said I was just a placeholder. That once he came back, I'd be out of the picture. That he still had old photos. Intimate ones. Ones that crossed the line. Janet's face twitched, but her tone remained cutting. Are you really dredging all that up now? You're embarrassing yourself. He took a step closer. Did you ever see those photos? I don't care about them, she snapped. You're making a scene. You think this proves something? That you're some tragic, noble martyr? Michael exhaled like he was ashamed for both of them. Janet, maybe we should let it go. She whirled on him. Why are you defending him? He slapped you. Jimmy looked between them. For the first time, he saw it clearly, the imbalance. Michael was playing the role of victim to perfection, and Janet was clinging to it. She needed someone to protect. Someone weaker. Someone who made her feel irreplaceable. And Jimmy? He didn't need her anymore. Not the way Michael did. He could feel the alcohol tightening his chest. His throat itched, and a rash was beginning to rise on his skin. The system buzzed in his mind. Warning, allergen detected. Host vitals declining. Jimmy ignored it. I'm not here to prove anything, he said quietly. I'm just tired. Janet tilted her head. Tired of what? Of waiting, he whispered. Of trying. Of being the one who always has to earn your gaze. She frowned. Oh, spare me. But even she sounded unsure. Jimmy turned toward the exit, his body trembling now, nausea rising like a tide. Behind him, laughter returned. A little quieter this time. Michael's voice followed. Hey Jimmy, next time, just keep her out of this. We all know who really matters to her. He didn't stop walking. The elevator doors closed behind him, and the sound of the party was swallowed. The system's voice rang again, gentler this time. Affection level, 51 out of 100. Host vitals unstable. He sat down in the lobby, hand pressed to his chest. I drank it, he murmured. Yes, the system said. I knew she wouldn't stop me. She didn't. Jimmy leaned back against the cool marble wall. You know what scares me most? What, host? Not dying. He closed his eyes. It's that she watched me do it, and didn't care. Janet was humming to herself in the kitchen, tapping her nails against the countertop while scrolling through her phone. Jimmy stood a few feet away, bags of groceries in both arms, watching her like a stranger would, detached, with the quiet awareness of someone who had long stopped expecting anything. "You didn't forget the dairy-free ice cream, right?" she asked without looking up. "I got it," he said. She nodded, still scrolling. "Michael's allergic to dairy. Can't have anything processed." "I know." That made her glance up. "Then don't get smart about it." He didn't reply. Just turned and began putting away the bags. The system spoke in a hush inside his head. Affection level, 53 out of 100. Minor increase due to perceived accommodation. He had long stopped caring about the number. It meant nothing now, not when he'd seen her run faster for Michael's stomach cramps than she ever had for Jimmy's allergic reactions. 3 weeks ago, Michael had texted her in the middle of the night, "Felt dizzy again. Might faint. Sorry to bother you." Janet had thrown on her coat and rushed out barefoot. When Jimmy had collapsed during a work dinner because someone laced the dessert with liquor, she hadn't shown up at the hospital until the following afternoon. "I was at a shareholder brunch," she said. "You know how important that is." The system had whispered back then, affection level, 22 out of 100. He had smiled bitterly, lying under the 4 drip. "I guess I do." It wasn't just the emergencies. She had celebrated Michael's birthday with a custom cake, violin players, hand-picked guests from their school days. Meanwhile, their wedding anniversary had passed unnoticed. Jimmy had spent that night alone, slicing a small cake he'd baked himself. She came home 3 hours late, half drunk, with Michael's cologne on her sleeve. "Oh," she said, seeing the cake. "I forgot." He hadn't said a word. Just blew out the candle. Then there was the salary. 1 entire month's paycheck wired to Michael for his recovery after a failed venture. No discussion, no heads up. When Jimmy asked, she looked at him like he was being ridiculous. "I didn't think I needed your permission," she snapped. "I'm your husband. And he's someone who's always been there for me." The system noted then, affection level, 18 out of 100. Host cortisol spiked. Still, he made dinner. Still, he waited at the table. He remembered the car ride to the hospital after Grandpa's checkup, just a few months ago. He'd been feeling hopeful that day, watching Janet actually agree to come along for once. Then he opened her glove compartment to get some tissues, and found it stuffed full of snacks and candy bars. Janet had always hated food in her car. She used to scold Jimmy even for bringing in coffee. "Those are Michael's," she said flatly when she noticed his pause. "He has hypoglycemia." He'd stared down at the wrappers, their corners poking out in chaotic disarray. "I remember when I fainted in the car," he said. "You said I was being dramatic." She didn't respond. Now, as he pulled out the last bag of groceries, fresh fish, steamed buns, Grandpa's favorite chrysanthemum tea, he took a breath. This birthday would be the last memory Jimmy left behind in this world. He'd already arranged the dinner, ordered the porcelain teacups Grandpa liked, made sure the mahjong table was dusted. It was the only thing left that mattered. "Dinner with Grandpa tomorrow," he said gently. "I thought we could both be there this year. It's been a while." She was brushing her hair in the mirror. "Didn't he yell at me last time?" "He just wants to see us together." Janet rolled her eyes. "Fine. I'll go. But I'm not staying long." He smiled, more to himself than at her. Later that evening, Clara stopped by. She hadn't been around in a few months, busy with work, she said. Janet greeted her with a hug, then disappeared into her room to take a call. Clara sat on the balcony beside Jimmy, watching the sky turn orange. "You look thinner," she said, gently. "And tired." "I've been sleeping better, actually." Clara turned toward him. "That's not what I said." Jimmy smiled. "You always notice." Clara hesitated. "Are you okay?" He nodded. I'm good. Just tying up some loose ends. Clara looked at him for a long moment. You're not okay. I am. You've always taken care of everyone else. But someone should take care of you, too. The breeze lifted the curtains behind them. He said nothing. Inside, Janet laughed loudly at something Michael said on the phone. Clara's expression hardened. Does she even see you anymore? She sees what she wants to see, Jimmy said. That's always been her way. Then leave. I'm not staying much longer. Clara blinked. What does that mean? Jimmy turned to her, his eyes soft. You'll know when it's time. She reached for his hand, but he pulled it back to adjust the sleeves of his sweater. He couldn't risk her noticing the swelling starting to appear, an after effect of the drink from the night before. The system buzzed faintly. Host vitals, unstable. 2 days remaining. Emotional regulation within normal range. Clara stood abruptly. If you won't say it, I will. You're not okay. And something's wrong. You're too calm. Too finished. Jimmy stood with her, opened the door, and smiled. You've always been kind, Clara. I'm not being kind, she snapped. I'm being honest. He bowed his head gently. Even better. Janet walked out of the room then, laughing as she ended the call. Who died? She asked when she saw Clara's face. No one yet, Clara muttered, grabbing her bag. Thanks for the tea. Jimmy walked her to the elevator. She turned back once before the doors closed. He waved. That night, he stayed in the study. Typed a short message to Grandpa, looking forward to tomorrow. Got your favorite tea. Hope you're hungry. Then he pulled out the small wooden box hidden in the bottom drawer. Inside it were the old hospital bands, a dried flower Janet had once tucked behind his ear during a rare moment of affection, and a note she left on their fridge 3 years ago, "Don't forget your scarf, idiot." He held it in his hands for a long time. Then closed the box and slipped it into his backpack. The system asked gently, would you like to schedule return protocol after the party? Jimmy whispered, not yet. I want to see him smile first. Understood. Outside, Janet's laughter echoed again. He didn't know what Michael had said, but it wasn't hard to imagine. He turned the study light off. Sat down in the dark. He had nothing left to say. But still, tomorrow, he would give Grandpa his best smile. He would play his role one last time. As the dutiful grandson. As the loving husband. As the man she never chose. And then, when it was done, he would leave this world just as he entered it. Quietly. The car ride was silent. Janet drove while Jimmy sat in the passenger seat, bags of carefully packed groceries resting at his feet. He had triple-checked everything before they left, Grandpa's favorite tea blend, the mooncakes he liked from that tiny bakery downtown, even the new wool slippers he'd ordered weeks ago. Jimmy glanced at Janet. Her profile was calm, unreadable. She hadn't complained this time. That was enough. Just as they turned off the main road and entered the longer stretch toward Grandpa Lynn's estate, her phone buzzed in the cup holder. Michael. She glanced down. The screen flashed with a shaky voice message, Janet, I messed up, I hit someone's car. They're shouting, I think they're going to call the cops. I didn't see the red light. Please, can you come? I don't know what to do. Janet's knuckles tightened around the steering wheel. Jimmy stared out the window. He sounds scared. He is, she replied quickly. You should go. Her eyes flicked to him. What? Pull over, he said gently. I'll walk the rest of the way. We're still 10 minutes out. I know the shortcut through the trail, Jimmy said. It's not far. Janet's brow furrowed. You want me to just leave you on the side of the road? I want you to go to him. She hesitated, clearly torn. Jimmy turned to her and smiled, small, tired, soft. You won't be at peace until you know he's okay. She didn't speak. "I'll explain everything to Grandpa," he said. Still, she lingered. "You're sure?" Jimmy nodded. "Go." She reached over to the back seat, grabbed her purse, and slid into the driver's seat again. "I'll be quick," she promised. "I'll come back after checking in on him." He opened the door. The wind was sharp against his skin. "Drive safe," he said. Then she was gone, tires skidding slightly as she sped off down the road. The system whispered in his ear. "Host, would you like me to notify Grandpa of your arrival?" "Not yet," Jimmy murmured, taking the path that cut through the woods toward the estate. The walk was shaded, narrow, and peaceful. For a moment, he allowed himself the illusion that he was just a man heading home with food for someone he loved. He heard the footsteps before he saw them. At first, he thought maybe someone was jogging nearby. Then he heard the crunch of gravel behind him, too fast. Too close. He turned, just as a shadow lunged. A knife glinted in the fading light. It sank into his side with a cold, clinical precision. The pain was sharp and immediate. He staggered back, eyes wide. A second figure came up from behind and knocked him down. Another strike. Then another. His breath caught in his throat as blood poured down his side, soaking through his sweater. The attackers didn't speak. Just did their job and vanished into the trees. Jimmy tried to sit up, gasping. He fumbled for his phone, but his vision blurred. The system's voice surged into his ear, louder, frantic. "Host vitals critical. Alert, external trauma. Alert, emergency protocol unavailable. Phone signal blocked. Attempting override." Nothing happened. "What's wrong?" he whispered. The system hesitated. Then quietly said, "Janet's call to Michael is still ongoing. Line occupied. Emergency override unable to connect." Jimmy lay still, the cold damp earth seeping into his bones. His blood pooled beneath him. Leaves rustled above, golden with autumn light. He thought about the tea, the slippers, the cake in the bag, now crushed. "Can't you reach anyone?" "Call blocked. Resources exhausted." She stayed on the line. He closed his eyes. She didn't call for help? No. Silence pressed down on them both. Somewhere not far away, fireworks cracked faintly in the distance. The city was alive. So was Michael. So was Janet. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. His chest rose and fell in shallow waves. Every breath burned now. The system whispered again, softer this time. "Host, there's still time to transfer consciousness if you agree." Jimmy opened his eyes and saw the stars through the tree branches. They looked different here. Not yet. He wanted to wait. He wanted to see if she came back. At Grandpa Lynn's estate, the candles on the cake had long since melted down to wax puddles. Grandpa sat at the head of the table, arms folded, a frown deepening with every passing minute. The butler glanced at the clock for the 5th time. "Sir," he said gently, "perhaps he's running late." "Nonsense," Grandpa snapped. "That boy hasn't missed a promise in 5 years." He stood up. His voice cracked. "And she, where is she? This is her family. Her blood. And I'm just a relic now?" "No, sir. He makes the effort every year. Always brings something thoughtful. Always listens. And she hasn't looked me in the eye in months." The butler had no answer. Outside, the lanterns flickered in the wind. The garden was quiet. No sound of footsteps. No familiar smile. No quiet voice saying, "Happy birthday, Grandpa. I brought your favorite tea." Nothing. Janet parked behind the wrecked car where Michael stood, rubbing his temple in mock distress. "I came as fast as I could," she said, rushing toward him. Michael gave her a weak smile. "You always do." A few people stood off to the side, watching. Michael leaned in and whispered, "I didn't mean to make it worse." She frowned. "You were driving distracted again, weren't you?" He nodded like a guilty child. "I was thinking about us. About how complicated things are." She sighed. "Let's talk later. I'll deal with the insurance." Michael's hand gripped her wrist gently. "Stay on the line for a little longer, okay? Just, don't hang up yet." She hesitated. "I left Jimmy." Michael smiled. "I know." Back in the woods, Jimmy's fingers had gone numb. The system's voice was faint now. Vitals dropping. Memory center failing. Final request pending. He couldn't speak anymore. Could barely think. All he could see was the look Janet gave him in the car when she asked if he was sure. He'd told her to go. He just hadn't realized she wouldn't come back. His body convulsed once, a sharp gasp cutting through the silence. The system, barely audible, whispered, "Affection level, 71 out of 100. Late-stage empathy detected. Line still occupied." And Jimmy's final thought surfaced, quiet, bitter, and painfully human. "She never chose me." Janet saw the lights before she saw the blood. The flashing red and blue strobed against the trees like something torn out of a dream, violent, surreal, cold. Her tire screeched to a halt just before the narrow trail, and she barely managed to unclip her seatbelt before she was out of the car, heels slipping on loose gravel. "Move, move," she screamed at the officers clustered near the path. Someone held her back, a female officer. "Ma'am, please, there's a crime scene." "Where is he?" But she didn't wait for an answer. She stumbled into the clearing just in time to see two paramedics zipping up the black body bag. Her eyes fixated on the blood, so much of it, pooling beneath the fallen leaves. The grocery bag lay split open beside it. Chrysanthemum tea spilled across the dirt. The red-stained mooncakes were still neatly boxed. "No," she shrieked, tearing forward, knees crashing to the ground as she scrambled for the zipper. "No, no, no, he was just here, he was just here." A paramedic reached out gently. "Ma'am, please." She shoved him away. Her fingers found the zipper. She pulled. Jimmy's face was pale, lips blue, eyes closed. His sweater was soaked to the ribs. His skin looked cold even under the artificial lights. Still. Too still. "No," she whispered again. "You're not dead. You're not, you don't get to leave like this. Jimmy, wake up. Please. Please." No response. Her cries turned into gasps. Screams. Then finally, silence. She bent over his body and sobbed like a woman who had just remembered how to feel. Behind her, Clara arrived at a run. She froze when she saw the body, hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. The butler followed behind, shaking, tears in his eyes. And then came Grandpa Lynn. His cane thudded against the soil as he stepped into the clearing. For a moment, he said nothing. Just stared at Jimmy's body. At Janet. At the mess of blood and groceries around them. His voice was low, hoarse. "Where the hell were you?" Janet didn't look up. Grandpa took another step. "He waited for you. You said you'd come back. You promised." I was," her voice cracked. "With him?" Grandpa growled. "With that leech? Again?" Clara stepped between them, her tone sharp. "Uncle, please." But Grandpa wasn't finished. His voice shook with fury. "That boy loved you more than anyone. He protected you, cared for you, begged me to give you another chance even when I was ready to cut you out." He pointed a trembling finger at her. "And you left him. You left him to bleed out alone like trash on the side of the road." "I didn't know." "You didn't care," he snarled. "You could have called someone. You could have come back. But you were too busy saving the boy who's done nothing but destroy this family from the inside." Janet curled into herself, hands covering her ears, but it was no use. You don't get to grieve him now, Grandpa spat. You gave him up long before he died. The funeral was quiet. Closed casket. White flowers. No music. Janet sat in the front row, dressed in black, face pale and empty. She hadn't spoken since that night. Her eyes were glass. Her hands trembled. Clara arrived halfway through the service. When she stood up to speak, people shifted uncomfortably. Janet glanced up, wary. I wasn't going to say anything, Clara began, holding up her phone, but I have to. She tapped the screen. A voice message played. Michael, tell him you're staying with me. Tell him if he ever shows up again, I'll press charges. That should keep him away for good. Another one. Michael, if he finds those photos, just say they're old. He doesn't know how much I have. He never knew what we did behind his back, did he? Gasps echoed through the room. Clara stared straight at Janet. You defended a man who planned this. Who manipulated you? Who sent men after your husband and stayed on the call while Jimmy bled to death? She raised a trembling hand. And this is the last photo he took. The screen changed to an image of the tea set, perfectly wrapped. The mooncakes. The slippers. And Jimmy's quiet, soft smile behind the camera. I don't want revenge, Clara said, voice breaking. I just wanted the truth to be known. Janet didn't speak. Her fingers were white against the edge of the pew. Grandpa Lynn stood next. Effective immediately, he said, Janet Lynn is removed from succession. All assets tied to her name are frozen. She is no longer affiliated with the Lynn family estate. Michael stood in the back, trying to slip out. Grandpa didn't look at him. Just nodded once. Two men in black suits followed Michael down the aisle. He didn't make it out the door. The sun was setting by the time Janet found herself back at the lake. She didn't remember driving there. Didn't remember taking off her shoes. The sand felt cold beneath her toes. The water was still. Undisturbed. This was the place. Where they once stood together in summer, barefoot, laughing like they'd never known pain. Jimmy had promised her they'd build a house near the water. She said he was ridiculous. Now, there was nothing. Her hand shook as she pulled the dried flower from her coat pocket, the one Jimmy had kept in the wooden box. She crouched by the edge of the water, staring at her reflection. The girl in the glassy surface didn't look like Janet Lynn. She looked like someone hollowed out by guilt. She tried to speak, but no words came. Tried again. Then, finally, a whisper. Jimmy, come back, please. Only the ripples answered. The smell of antiseptic was sharp and sterile. A monitor beeped in quiet rhythm beside his ear. The room was white, too white, and cold in the way that only hospital rooms could be. Jimmy opened his eyes. It took a moment to register the light above, the soft weight of the blanket over his legs, the warmth of life still in his veins. He blinked slowly. His throat ached. His limbs felt heavy. Every breath was effort. A sharp gasp filled the room. Doctor. He's awake. It was Jia, his old colleague from the elementary school. Her voice cracked from emotion, and she rushed to his side, tears already welling. You're okay, she whispered, clutching his hand. You're really okay. Jimmy didn't answer at first. His lips parted, then closed again. Because he remembered. Not this world, but the other one. The one where Janet looked at him without love. Where Michael smiled like a knife. Where Grandpa's hand had rested on his shoulder one last time. And where he bled out beneath a canopy of golden leaves, waiting for a call that never came. He turned his head slowly. The 4 in his arm pulsed. The monitor continued to beep. His heart was still beating. You've been in a coma for nearly 3 weeks, Jia said, brushing tears off her cheek. They said you jumped into the river to save those 2 kids. The current pulled you under. Jimmy blinked again, then rasped, "Are they okay?" "They're safe. Thanks to you." A long silence passed. Only the monitor kept time. Then a familiar voice echoed softly in his mind, warm, composed, and unmistakably digital. "Welcome back, host." He didn't speak, but the voice continued. Mission result, failed. Affection did not meet required threshold within specified timeline. You expired inside the target world. Jimmy closed his eyes. But, the system added, tone shifting, after your departure, the subject's affection exceeded max capacity. In accordance with Clause 47C of the Experimental Emotional Bond Module, a reward exception has been authorized. His brows twitched faintly. You've been granted full compensation, the system confirmed. As well as a bonus for self-sacrificial closure. Jimmy tried to smile, though his face barely moved. That's dramatic, he murmured hoarsely. I've learned from you, the system replied. A small laugh escaped him, painful, dry, but real. 3 days later, Jimmy was discharged. He walked with a cane, slowly, carefully. But each step felt more solid than the last. At home, the sun poured through the windows of his tiny apartment. It looked exactly as he'd left it, books piled near the couch, lesson plans on the desk, a half-eaten bag of sunflower seeds near the window. He sat down carefully, letting the silence settle. Then opened his laptop. The system buzzed to life. Shall I display your balance? Go ahead, Jimmy said. A second later, the screen flashed. 318,720,000.00. Jimmy stared. The digits blurred for a moment as tears filled his eyes, not from greed, not from joy, but from the possibilities. How did you convert the points? He asked quietly. I observed your spending habits. Prioritized humanitarian donation channels. Cross-referenced with your previous salary and cost of living indices. Result, liquidated reward into multi-currency donation potential. He stared at the number again. That's enough, he whispered. Enough to sponsor schools. Clinics. Meals. Uniforms. You always cared more about others than yourself, the system said. Jimmy didn't reply. His eyes flicked toward the corner of the room, where a single photo rested face down on a shelf. He reached over and picked it up. It was the one photo he'd taken during the last day in that world, of Janet, standing with her back to him on the trail, walking away. He turned it over in his hands for a long time. Then, quietly, he stood, walked to his drawer, opened the top one, and placed the photo gently inside. He closed it slowly. No anger. No grief. Just peace. She loved you at the end, the system offered gently. More than you ever thought. He nodded. But love that comes too late, isn't love at all. The system was silent for a moment. Are you ready to begin again? Jimmy turned toward the window, where the soft sound of children laughing drifted in from a nearby schoolyard. Yes, he said. He grabbed his jacket, picked up the folder labeled Grant Proposal, Rural School Initiative, and stepped into the hallway. The sun was warm. The wind was soft. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't trying to win someone's heart. He wasn't proving himself. He wasn't waiting for anyone to choose him. He had already chosen the kind of man he wanted to be. Children waved as he approached the gates of the school. Some recognized him, Mr. Jimmy, the teacher who once stayed after class to help them with math, who brought them shoes during winter, who never raised his voice even when they broke the windows. Mr. Jimmy's back, one shouted. He smiled softly. I'm home, he whispered. Then walked through the gate to begin again, this time as himself.